But I wanted to say I'm incredibly honored to be here today delivering the keynote to kick off such an inspiring event that brings together writers, readers, and everyone in between over our shared love of books. So when I was first asked to be one of the keynote speakers, I was a little shocked. I usually feel like I'm the one asking to attend events like this. So needless to say, I was excited to be asked to give a speech instead of the one begging to come. So I was really excited, but then I realized, oh, I actually have to give the speech. So then I got really overwhelmed. But I'm a writer, not a speaker. So even though I do a lot of speaking at events like these or school visits where I talk about my books, this isn't my natural habitat. So hence the cheat sheet I'll be reading from. So I usually prefer to be the one writing the words, not necessarily delivering them. But I thought to myself, I've never done a keynote before, and this might be a really great opportunity. So I agreed and started searching for a relevant topic that I thought this audience might be interested in, and also a topic that I have experience in. So I thought to myself, well, I certainly have a lot of experience being told no. So you can see this is why I was shocked to be asked to do a keynote. But all joking aside, I thought in life and in this industry, we've all been told no a lot, right? So raise your hand if anyone here has ever been told no before. Okay, good, it's not just me. Okay, it sucks, right? But being told no is a part of life. So I decided I wanted to speak to you about the power of no. So this is what I came up with. The power of no has two meanings to me. The first is not being ashamed to say no to the things that take us away from our goals. So how many in this room are either already involved in the writing industry or interested in getting involved? Good, I'm among my friends here. So one of the hardest things I've discovered about writing is being able to carve out time to do it. But realizing that it's important to you and giving up the guilt about saying no to others so you can have time to pursue your dream is a very important first step. For example, if you ask someone to do something with you and their response is, no, I can't because I have to work, it's totally acceptable, right? But if someone asks you to do something with them and your response is, no, I can't, I have to write or read or edit or whatever it may be, you get dirty looks. This is what I call true writer's block. For some weird reason, writing is this strange profession that most people have trouble acknowledging as a career. Even us writers are guilty of that sometimes, right? I know I have been. When I finally started thinking about my writing as my job, I was able to start saying no without feeling guilty and ended up getting a lot more writing done. And I mean a lot more, but we'll get to that later. What I really want to talk about is the second meaning of no, which is rejection and the power of no as a motivator. So there's no way around it. Rejection sucks. And unfortunately, it's a big part of the writing industry. We literally created the rejection letter, so we're used to it. But rejection isn't restricting only to writers. It's also a big part of everyday life. When I asked the question earlier about who's been told no before, every one of you raised your hands, or at least you should have. And that's why I chose this topic to speak about. Because whether you're in the writing industry or not, I think learning how to deal with being told no is something we can all appreciate. So there are two big no's in my life that I want to talk about with you today. And maybe before I get into that, I should explain that I've never really been good with the word no. My parents would probably tell you it's my least favorite word. I was one of those kids that if you told me no, it made me want to do it 10 times more. Even with completely irrational things, or things I didn't even necessarily want before I was told I couldn't have them. Is anyone else in here like that? Okay, good. We're all gonna get along just fine. So I would hear things like, you can't eat the entire box of macaroni and cheese, or you can't dye your hair purple, or you can't date him. And my response was always, oh yeah, watch me. And let me tell you, I can admit not all of my watch me moments were good ones. I did not look good with purple hair. But I'm not ashamed to say that I didn't really grow out of that stubborn streak because I use the word no or can't as a motivator. And that has gotten me to where I am today. Challenging the no's in my life has allowed me to follow my dream of becoming a writer. It's allowed me to publish 24 novels, to capture the elusive Amazon bestsellers flag, to have a book ranked in the top 100, win awards for my writing, have books published in 13 countries, and all without ever having an agent or a traditional publishing deal. And I share that with you so that you know it is possible. but most importantly, challenging no's has allowed me to have a career doing what I love. Not letting the word no get to me and get in my way allows me to travel the nation speaking to students about the importance of writing and get them excited about the magic of books, and it's allowed me to be here today speaking with you. So by the time you leave here, I want you to be just as motivated by the word no as I am, because I promise you it will help you accomplish your goals. Okay, so we're gonna try something. I want you all to close your eyes and picture something that you want. It can be a goal, a bucket list item, something average, or something completely over the top. It just has to be something that you really want. Okay, when everyone has it, open your eyes. So now that we all have our goals, look to the person next to you. And if you haven't met yet, introduce yourselves. Okay, so now that we're all friends, look at that new friend and repeat after me. No, you can't.
No, you can't.
It will never happen. I mean, is this a great keynote or what? I mean, just here telling you no, strangers telling you no. So you guys are just gonna go home and be like, I met this author, she told me to visualize my goals, then had a stranger tell me it's never gonna happen. It might be my last keynote. But seriously, I promise, I'm getting to the good stuff. I'm not just here to say no. So now I want to tell you about two of the biggest and most memorable no's in my life. The first was, you'll never publish a book. And the second was, you'll never have a child. Now these weren't your average no's for me, because it was science telling me I couldn't have children, and it was my self-doubt telling me I couldn't publish a novel. So let's start with the novel. I grew up loving storytelling. I fell in love with the idea that your imagination has no limits. And when I was introduced to Shakespeare in high school, I was hooked. I wanted to be a writer. I wanted the ability to transport readers to imaginary worlds, to make them feel things like love and hope and joy and possibility. I wanted to create worlds with words. In high school, I had this really great English teacher. I took all her classes because she challenged my writing and introduced me to amazing books that I'd never read before. Let's call this teacher Mrs. X. I remember being a senior right before graduation in Mrs. X's class, and I was feeling all mopey about high school coming to an end. And when class was over on that particular day, Mrs. X held me after and asked me what was wrong. So I told her, I'm nervous about the future and leaving my safe little high school existence, and I was worried that my high school boyfriend and I would break up because we were going to 2 different colleges. Mrs. X was very sweet. She assured me that my high school boyfriend and I would never break up because we were the real deal. And then she started asking me what I wanted to do when I was done with school. And that was the first time I ever said out loud that I wanted to write a book. I can still picture standing in that classroom with Mrs. X as she said to me, "Oh, honey, that's not a realistic goal. You can't just be a writer." So that was the first time the power of no failed me. For once, I didn't feel that fire to prove the world wrong and say, "Oh yeah, watch me." Instead, I let all my doubts in. I thought, maybe Mrs. X is right. Maybe I wasn't good enough. I didn't know any authors. I lived in a small town. There's nothing special about me. What made me think I could do something so grand? So my self-doubt won that fight, and I didn't revisit the dream of writing a book for 15 years. So let's move to my second big no. Fast forward a couple of years, I moved to Florida, graduated college with an English degree, and married an incredible man, who was not my high school boyfriend, by the way. And we started a life together. After a few years of marriage, we decided we wanted to start a family. We tried, and after a year with no luck, I was referred to a specialist. And then another, and then another, and then another. I tried everything the doctors threw at me, but after 2 stressful and expensive years of fertility treatments, hormone injections, IUIs, and everything in between, the doctors were ready to give up. They didn't have any physical answers for me. All they said is that I couldn't get pregnant. That was a very hard no to swallow. And even though I'd been through all the medical treatments myself and knew I was very educated physicians telling me no with science to back them, I just couldn't accept it. Hearing no still motivated me. It fanned that spark inside of me that wanted to prove the world wrong. So even though I decided to stop treatments, I didn't give up hope that someday I would eventually be able to have my own family. Maybe it just wouldn't be on my schedule or how I planned it. So fast forward a few more years to 2012, when both of my big no's came back into my life. I was pregnant. Somehow it happened, all on its own, and since it seemed like a miracle, I was determined to stay pregnant, which meant slowing my lifestyle down. I suddenly had a lot more time on my hands, and since you can only binge watch so much Netflix before your mind starts to melt, I decided maybe this was a good time to see if I could write that book I'd always wanted to. I had recently finished reading the Harry Potter series and knew I wanted to write a book that would be full of magic and something I could share with my son. And that's how my first book, The Geneva Project, was born. The Geneva Project is a young adult fantasy series about a girl whose true identity is hidden in an ancient legend. Uncovering the truth leads to secrets beyond her wildest dreams and unlocks magic that will change her world forever. After that series, I went on to write YA romance, boyfriend series, adult romance, retreat series, anthologies in multiple genres, and have been blessed to be a part of Millie Taden's Sassy Ever After Kindle world. But my first book, Truth, will always be one of my favorites. It has a special place in my heart because in the beginning, it was a secret that I shared with only my son. Because let me tell you, being brave enough to write a book and brave enough to share it with the world are two different things. At least they were to me. It was easy to talk to my pregnant belly and have a one-sided discussion about my characters and this magic world I was creating. But I didn't tell anyone else about it. Because if I told someone I was writing a book, that meant I had to finish it. And even if I did finish it, what if it sucked? I think these are questions that plague all writers, no matter what point of their career they're in. But of course, I eventually did share my book. I let my husband read it, and he liked it so much that he taught himself how to use CreateSpace and KDP so he could publish it on Amazon. All without telling me, I might add. But all was forgiven when I held my first paperback in my hands, and it didn't hurt that it was getting some good reviews. Yes, they were probably all from my friends and family, but I didn't care. I'd accomplished my goals. I'd never thought I'd get to be a mom or that I'd get to publish a book, but I had done both. My power of no confidence was back. I was convinced 2012 was my year. I had a perfect little boy in June and a novel in December. My life was complete. I distinctly remember going to work one day in January when a local paper ran a story on me and the Geneva Project. The article was titled A Labor of Love, and it talked about how I'd written my first book, which had now won an award, while I was pregnant. When I got to my office, a coworker held it up and said, "You really have it all, don't you?" And I naively said, "Yes." But how could I not say yes? I was happier than I'd ever been in my life. I was married to my best friend. I was a mom to a sweet little boy. I'd published an award-winning novel, and I still find time to write on my lunch break. Life was awesome. It was everything I wanted. Until it wasn't. On Valentine's Day, my son had a seizure. He was rushed to the hospital where he would spend the next month of his life. The doctors didn't know what was wrong with him, but they also couldn't get his seizures under control. Of course, me being me, I didn't take no for an answer. We pursued specialists who eventually found a diagnosis, but it wasn't good. My son was diagnosed with Alpers syndrome, a rare and terminal disease. We were told most children don't make it to their first birthday. My son was 8 months old. We were also told there's a possibility that my son will never leave the hospital because he now needed round-the-clock care. My world was shaken and my mind was reeling, but still I knew somehow we would figure it out. We wouldn't take no for an answer. We would find a way to bring our son home and make the most of every moment we had left. And we did. My husband quit his job to stay home and care for our son. I continued to work so we could afford his medical expenses. And we spent the next 3 months enjoying every second together. On June 19th, just 5 days after we celebrated his first birthday, my son lost his fight with his illness. When I tell you I was unprepared for the pain of losing a child, it's true. When I tell you that nothing can erase that kind of loss, it's true. But I do believe that you can heal from it. Writing was the thing that healed me. It brought me out of the darkness, and it continues to do so every day. I wrote about my son's death in my second book, Secrets, because I couldn't find the courage to speak the words out loud. I wrote that book because I felt I owed it to my son to finish the story we started together. And once I started writing, I couldn't stop. It was a way for me to pour my heart out, to say the things that were too hard to voice. I started a blog called 52 Sunrises to discuss my journey of love and loss, and something magic happened. Readers started to relate to my words. I got messages from people I didn't know saying they were connected to something I'd written, and it helped them cope. But it also helped me because it made me realize that I wasn't alone, and that if there were others out in the world dealing with painful things, then so could I. And if my words could help them, then I would make that my goal. What I learned from all of this is that you can't put a price on time. In the last few months with my son, I slept less than I thought was humanly possible, but I lived more. I let go of all the little and petty things in my life that I used to think were important. If there's one thing that death teaches us, it's what matters and what we can live without. And that's why I wanted to share this story with you. If I had accepted being told I couldn't be a mom, I never would have experienced what it is to love someone in a way that words can't describe. If I'd accepted my own self-doubt of never being a writer, I never would have discovered the strength I hold inside myself. My son taught me grace and courage and happiness. My writing has taught me how to get through all the moments in between. If there's something you want in this world, if that goal you imagined earlier is important to you, go after it. Time is precious, tomorrow isn't guaranteed. Go after what you want today. And if the world tells you no, I want you to stand up and say, watch me. My son's death was not the end of the story, but rather the beginning. I've become a changed person since I had this experience. And as hard as it's been, I try to make the most out of every day and make it count. And I asked myself if my son would be proud. I like to think he would be. I followed my dreams. I write from the heart. I speak to students to encourage them to do the same. I may not have the part in my son's life that I wanted, but I'm blessed to have written books that will continue to influence young readers for a lifetime. I wanted to share one more moment of silver lining that I experienced recently. 2 years ago, in the anticipation of the 4th book in the Geneva Project, I set up a book tour in the Northeast. I sent packets to high school media specialists in the area and started scheduling my tour. I was humbled to be invited to speak at 3 schools in Pennsylvania, including my old high school. On September 23rd, 2015, things came full circle as I walked through the high school halls again and spoke to a library full of writing students and almost all of my old teachers, including Mrs. X. I spoke about my journey of writing and the endless possibility it offers as a career. When the presentation was over, Mrs. X came up to me and gave me a hug. She said, "I'm so proud of you. I always knew you could do it. You just need a little determination." So I think I'll always wonder if she knew the power of no was the best way to motivate me. But either way, I'm glad I didn't let doubt or fear keep me from my dreams. My hope for all of you is that you make the most out of this weekend. Opportunities like this are rare, and when they come around, you need to harness them. You will never be here in this moment again, so make the most of it. Meet the person sitting next to you that you didn't know. Take advantage of being in the same room with industry professionals that inspire you. Talk to the authors you find sitting at their tables. Ask them why they got into writing, or what book inspired them most, or what they're currently reading, or what TV series they binge watch. You have more in common than you know. Take every opportunity to grow and make connections. The people I have met at conferences like these have become lifelong friends, and I wouldn't be where I am today without the incredible authors, bloggers, editors, and readers I've bonded with at book events. I want that experience for all of you. And most of all, when we come back here next year or our paths cross at another conference, I want you to be able to share your story with all of us and tell us all the ways that you've proved the world wrong. Thank you.